Gentlemen, have you been getting any sleep over there?
Barely.
Not really. It's always light outside here.
What's up, freaks? We're back for Rabbit Hole Recap, Rip 201. Obviously, myself and Matt are here, but we're joined by Jack Mallers this week. Jack, how the fuck have you been, sir?
Yo, I am fantastic. Better than usual because of the last 3 days, which I think we'll discuss. But I was telling your almighty crew before you hit record, it doesn't matter if I end up being the president of the United States. RHR will always be a fanboy moment for me. So it's an honor and a pleasure, gentlemen. Huge fan.
Well, the feeling is mutual. The fandom goes both ways here. We always love having you on the show. And yeah, let's discuss. You guys are drinking beers. You're in Norway right now. You were just at the Oslo Freedom Forum all week, arming dissidents and freedom fighters with Bitcoin knowledge. What's it been like?
I don't like the term dissidents.
Okay, I'm sorry.
I feel like dissidents is what is like the negative version of activists.
Okay, activist. We'll go with activist.
Dude, it's always special. Did you go to the one in Miami last year?
I did not make it, no.
So this was my I guess my second Oslo Freedom Forum, my third HRF event, because I went to one in New York, one in Miami, and then this one in Oslo over the last 3 years. I've been working with like the HRF activists or the activists that HRF supports since early 2020. And to me, it's one of the most rewarding things I do in Bitcoin. It reminds me of why the work we do is important. It reminds me of why tools like Bitcoin are so crucial to have in terms of preserving freedom and allowing people to choose their own destiny. And it just really puts everything into perspective. To me, it's always like the best Bitcoin event because it's not a Bitcoin event. It's a human event about freedom. But I'll let Jack go into it because Jack, this was your first time, right?
Yeah, this was my first. Boy, I don't know how to articulate it to do it justice. One of the one-liners I've used to describe it to my parents is everything I thought I cared about in life, I care about a lot less, if that makes any sense. It was that moving of an experience for me personally. And I don't know, some of like the most special relationships in life is when you mutually look up to each other, right? Like that's almost what you want out of things like a marriage. And it is that level of mutual respect and benefit where to be a Bitcoiner and look up to activists that are fighting in such a brave, courageous way for the global fight for freedom, and then the way that they look at us and like, man, you all have superpowers and an ability to use a sovereign, distributed, censorship-resistant, uncensorable, unfreezable asset like you do. And it's just it's really special. It's like one of those things where I remember before I went on stage, Gladstein was like, "Hey, buddy, just remember you're not explaining that this is better than Visa this time." And that hit me like right in the left side of the chest, man. It is. It's like that. It is. It's the delta between those two. It's huge and it's hard to articulate. So I'm super humbled to be here. I haven't listened this much and not spoken in a long time. So I don't know if that made any sense, but that's how I feel.
Well, I think that's important to get into. Like, what was being discussed? How much do these people that you've been having discussions with all week need Bitcoin? What are some of the problems that they're experiencing? What are some of the stories that you guys have heard this week?
So, first of all, to the freaks, this is going to be a short and tight rip because we're currently on a working retreat that HRF and CT have kindly put together with Bitcoiners and activists, so we can work with them on helping further, goals in terms of education and tools So our schedule is in flux, and that's also the reason why yesterday the rip didn't happen, because I'm trying to the schedule is just constantly flowing. We're just working. We're trying to understand each other, trying to understand how things are moving forward, how best to move forward. And anyway, that is why it didn't happen yesterday. That's why RHR didn't happen yesterday. But we have to bring RHR every week. So here we are today on Friday, but it is going to be a tight rip. So this year was the evolution of what Alex and I've been helping him with since 2020 in terms of trying to bring Bitcoin into the HRF sphere, HRF's work. So first off, if you haven't seen it, you can go to oslofreedomforum.com and you can watch all the talks. I suggest you watch them. They're extremely powerful. So the talks were mostly from human rights activists around the world talking about their stories, completely not focused on Bitcoin, even though they have pain points that obviously Bitcoin can help fix or help mitigate. And then there was also a separate Bitcoin Academy sessions where we taught activists hands-on, how to use Bitcoin. We went from 0 to 1 in terms of using Moon Wallet, installing it, receiving Bitcoin, spending Bitcoin, backing up, restoring. I had a privacy session. There was a BTC Pay session. We talked about CBDCs and what the impacts could be. But back to the human rights side. So I spoke to a Chinese activist named Johar, and she is a Uyghur, and her father was just thrown in jail for a life sentence for fighting for civil rights. They called him a separatist, they called him a revolutionary, and they threw him in jail. And just to show the kind of scope that these people have to deal with, her cousin was thrown in jail for a 10-year sentence, I believe 4 years ago. And it was because her cousin was driving down the road and she hit a checkpoint and they asked her for her phone and she refused to give them her phone. So they arrested her and then they took her phone and then they found the father's picture on it and they were like, you're supporting a separatist. So they threw her in jail for 10 years. So when we start to talk about how Bitcoin can work with in these situations, their threat models, a lot of their threat models are way, way, way different than someone who's living in the United States. I mean, there was a picture on her phone and she got 10 years in jail. So if you have a mobile wallet on your phone, let alone talking about Bitcoin privacy issues, but you have a mobile wallet on your phone and they see it, maybe it's compromised or maybe you go to jail because of it, right? So that is pretty insane. On a more positive note, I had a really long conversation with Roya, who was working and continues to work outside of Afghanistan for Afghanistan, but she's an Afghani who has been paying women who work for her in Bitcoin that are Afghani women who otherwise couldn't have a bank account without a man opening it or a family member opening it for them. She's successfully been paying them in Bitcoin. She came into and she started her work, a decade ago, and then a lot of that included education. She did a lot of education. She helped educate a lot of women, young girls, how to use Bitcoin in Afghanistan. And then when the Taliban took over, a lot of them were very prepared for handling that situation when they otherwise wouldn't have been. And she talked to she has friends who were sophisticated businessmen, politicians that dismissed Bitcoin, who lost everything when the Taliban took over, that they escaped with just a backpack. But these young girls who otherwise would have been excluded from the financial system in Afghanistan were more prepared than those men, which just kind of goes to show you that if you have this situation, if you prepare ahead of time, if you prepare and try and learn how to use the tools ahead of time, and you have this education effort ahead of time, and all of a sudden during these times of chaos and upheaval, Bitcoin really can provide a substantial improvement over your situation than otherwise.
Yeah. it's intense stuff to think about. Like, so having had this experience, what, as Bitcoiners, going back and building and educating people via Strike and via our platform here at RHR and Citadel Dispatch and everything else you do, Matt, like what is top of your minds coming back from this trip of things that you'd like to see come to market or bring to market yourselves?
I mean, the most important thing is perspective. The most important thing is perspective, and to realize that there's people around the world that are in way worse situations than you are. To be very grateful for our position and our situation and our security, right? Just like I'm all I can think all the time, is that I'm just extremely grateful. And in terms of actually using Bitcoin to help these people that are in these, oppressive countries, I think it's important to build tools that are geared to their situations. And so, like, for instance, I mean, I've had a lot of conversations. I got to meet Dario for the first time, a Moon wallet with 2 U's. And, like Dario, it's really interesting, right? Because he's a lifelong Argentinian, right? So he's not using a wallet made by Americans for Argentinians. He made a wallet as an Argentinian that attempts to solve the pain points that he sees Argentinians face every day and that he faced every day, right? And so he has real world use cases that he's actually gearing his particular trade-off model for that wallet when he built it, right? And I talked to Abubakar from Nigeria, who's on the B Trust board, and he's working on a lot of education efforts. And I talked to Fode from Senegal, who's working on a lot of efforts. And they're working with Bernard Bra Bitnob, and the three of them are trying to create. They have this program called Kala with a Q, and they're trying to create more developers in Africa with the idea that having developers in Africa building Bitcoin wallets in Africa for Africans ends up with wallets and options that are geared specifically for their situation, right? So I think it's important for us to empower people from around the world who are working on building tools on top of Bitcoin, because one of the cool parts about Bitcoin, as Jack always says, is that it's open monetary network, right? So everyone can use it in different ways. It's a protocol at the end of the day, right? And for people to have the option to use it in different ways, because most people aren't programmers, it's important that we have people from around the world building different types of tools with different types of trade-offs geared to the people that they live around, right?
Yeah. No, that makes a lot of sense, and that's why I'm extremely excited to see what Eric and Obi are doing with Fedimint. I think that model, Obi bringing his perspective, being a Nigerian. Hope I got that right.
Fedimint is absolutely perfect. Fedimint is absolutely perfect for these activists, and it's funny that you mentioned it because I just haven't shut the fuck up about Fedimint for the last week. I mean, we've had many conversations with Obi this week. I'll just put it that way, and it's very exciting. It's just I'm curious, Jack. Like, what's your takeaways? Like, how do you?
So I mean, to add on to some of the activist stories, spent a lot of time with a super sweet lady from Ukraine who used Bitcoin. She spun up a BTC Pay server, and she was able to be then interoperable with the entire planet in receiving a bearer instrument that's settled instantly to no cost to her. There were no chargebacks. There was no settlement delays. It wasn't expensive. And she actually used Bitcoin as a global payment rail that increases the velocity of money and an ability to hyper raise in a time of extreme crisis where every second mattered. And to people to her left and her right, they were maybe raising money for 4 to 5 helmets a week for soldiers, for example, and she was raising 400 to 500. And it was actually because she was using a superior payment rail. It was because those that were using the legacy rails, if they even had access to them, they couldn't actually collect and use the funds until the old payment systems cleared them, right? The 2 to 7 day settlement times, and maybe one donation, you only get 80% of it. And so you need, if you 20% fees, you spend that money 5 times, the money's gone, right? And so that was an example of a global bearer instrument that does not give you counterparty risk settlement delays, is extremely cheap and increases the velocity of the money, and no one could stop her. She used BTC Pay Server. So let's use that instance on my far left. On my far right, I got to share the stage with Fode, and there's also a sweetheart here from Togo, and their currency is managed by France, by the French, and they're in Africa. And so they told stories where, when I spent some time in El Salvador, and El Salvador didn't have their own currency, but it was the US dollar, which is arguably the most powerful fiat currency in the world. It's the world's reserve currency. These stories were horrifically worse. It was overnight, I lost half my wealth. And the amount of hope that's deprived in me, what the fuck, why should I go to the gym? Why should I study and do my homework? Doesn't matter. I could bust my ass and work as hard as I can, be the greatest guy I know myself to be, and it doesn't matter. My life's not in my control. In fact, it's not even in my own government's control. It's sitting somewhere in France. And so those are two really polar opposite uses of Bitcoin. And like one of the takeaways I had was money is as dangerous and powerful a weapon for evil as it is a tool for prosperity and peace. It's an extremely sharp knife, and it can cut both ways. And for that very reason, it was a violent reminder to me that the role and function of money should never, ever be delegated to any group or any person. And that our species was at peak when that was delegated to an instrument like gold. And when that was taken from us, that's why Bitcoin is so important, is relieving our species really just terrifying relationship with trusted relationships that govern and perform the function of money. And so you want to know people that aren't interested in the proof of stake trade-offs, right? Right? I mean, it was the most violent reminder of what we're trying to do. And, the separation from money and state, it's delegating the function of money away from a special group. Gladstein has always saying, since I've been here, over 50% of the world lives under an authoritarian regime. And that means over 50% of the world can use money as a weapon to suppress, harm, and sometimes kill people. And there's nothing we could do about it if we don't have Bitcoin. And so it also was I was angered in some of the discussions about proof of stake and shitcoins, because it's one thing to shill your bags. It's another thing to try and deprive humanity of the only tool that half the world has to live a quality of life that isn't suffering and sometimes death. And so that's what I got to say. Very emotional, man. Yeah, again, it was one of the most humbling trips. You think you care about going to the club and meeting a hot chick until you have experiences like this. So that's what's on my mind.
Obviously I haven't been yet, but as an outsider looking in at the schedule that Alex has put together and the Human Rights Foundation has put together, it's extremely encouraging, because and this is top of mind for me because I wrote about it last night in the Bent, but Bitcoin provides individuals the world over with the ability to take action and actually build tools to fight against a weaponized monetary system, which the fiat system is around the world. And I think that is one thing I like about the Oslo Freedom Forum specifically, is, again, just arming these activists with knowledge and the tools to begin building back artillery in the digital world. Maybe I don't want to use like bombastic military
army and artillery.
I know.
We're training and helping activists
yes,
use a powerful defensive technology
There we
protect
go.
themselves.
This is why I have you on. This is why there's two parts to this show. You help bring reel in my lapse in judgment with vernacular here. But no, again, like that's the beauty of Bitcoin, and we've seen it throughout our experiences with Bitcoin. Is like it's providing us with the tools to build our defensive technologies in the digital realm that can help us combat this terrible situation that billions of people around the world find themselves in. And obviously, we do have a significant amount of comfort here in the United States where we're all from. And it is weird to think that even though we have all this comfort, we're still angry at the system that we live under. And I'm extremely glad of what Alex and the Human Rights Foundation have done to really push to the fore, like, hey, you guys think you have it bad. Billions of people around the world have it considerably worse. And you may think Bitcoin's important, but it is extremely, extremely important for these individuals if they want to bring themselves into a free world.
Yeah, and you know, like what was also fascinating for me, I probably should ask Gladstein before I came on here, but I know he tweeted it, so I can at least allude to it, is going to the parliament.
Yeah, you can talk about this.
Yeah, I was actually going to ask you because you were part of that contingency that went into the Norwegian parliament, correct?
Yeah, and again, it was just such a violent reminder to me, and such an educational experience, and so humbling. To where it's one thing to, and I'm not quoting anyone in the parliament, and I'm not. The point I want to make is, it's not. Hey, Federal Reserve, go fuck yourself, and you guys are criminals and such. And listen, like, I'm not going to speak on my own opinion on that, and people can believe whatever they want. The point is, though, I think we have general consensus that over half of the world, authoritarians all over the globe, have an ability to use money and the existing financial system as a weapon to harm and to kill. And the fight for global freedom is very binary, Marty. You're either fighting on the right side or the wrong side. And so it was amazing to be able to educate people, not with, hey, listen, this is a money that can't be inflated. Hey, listen, this is a better version of Visa. It's, hey, listen, this is the most powerful tool and really the only shot we got at solving this problem. And you're either fighting for freedom or you're standing in the way. Don't peer over your yacht and look at the life raft and be, ooh, that doesn't look like they have a private chef on there. Hey, asshole, maybe it wasn't built for you. In fact, don't just turn your back and go fill up your champagne glass. Maybe help the person, maybe dive into the water and help them on the fucking lifeboat so that one day they can get on the yacht. Have you ever considered it wasn't built for you? So the whole concept of, I don't necessarily like how much energy is used. Well, guess what? I'll hang dry my clothes before I deprive people of the only hope they got. And it was the most violent way of Bitcoin's here. And if creating money was free, there'd be a lot of it. It'd be hyperinflated. It'd be political, and delegation to who has power would turn to violence. And so tell me again why using energy to relieve our relationship with trust to perform that function is a bad idea. Look at this woman from Togo whose father's been in and out of prison and whose life's been deprived of any form of happiness, and tell her you don't like how Bitcoin's using energy. In fact, to take my yacht example, how about you look at your energy grid and the fact that Bitcoin has great energy uses, it stabilizes the grid, and that you could plug a Bitcoin miner near a waterfall. I don't want to plug my washing machine near a waterfall. I don't want to live in a fucking washing machine. But a Bitcoin miner can. How about you take a more progressive, active approach? How about that? And it's the total change of narrative. It's one thing to hedge the Fed's CPI. It's another thing to save half of the planet. How about that? And it was a total change of conversation. It was like, you know what? If proof of work is the only way we've been able to solve this problem, let's not dissuade people away from it. And let's take a closer look at how we can maybe be helpful and lean over the yacht and see who's drowning over there and who needs to get on. So,
yeah, I mean,
that's how that went.
Well, it's incredible that you're having that conversation with the Norwegian Parliament. You have the Oslo Freedom Forum, where you're working with these activists, and then the juxtaposition of all this going on in Oslo as the World Economic Forum meets in Davos, and you have their projection of what they want to bring to the world. And it's an incredible juxtaposition of the freedom that you described, Jack, and the panopticon that World Economic Forum crew would like to throw us in. There's a lot of CBDC talk, a lot of Great Reset talk, and just the fact that that's getting all the press in the mainstream. That's what everybody's talking about on Twitter. But you have this really grassroots movement where all the signal actually is in Oslo going on at the same time.
You just said CBDCs, which reminded me. I mentioned it in passing before. At the Freedom Forum, we had the first ever panel on CBDCs at a human rights event, and I was joined by Lisa Negat, aka Nifty Nay, Matt Mazinkus, aka Crypto Voices, and Janine, who I got to meet in person finally, which was fucking baller, and I got to meet Hodlnot in person too. Like two of my favorite people that I had no idea what they look like, and I finally got to meet them in person, so I really fucking fanboyed over it, which was really exciting. But talking about like the dangers of CBDCs, he mentioned Togo. In Togo, not only do they have this Colonial Frank, which, by the way, the French switched to the euro, right? They don't have a colonial euro. They're still, like, not only was the Colonial Frank substandard to the euro, they don't even have, they didn't have a choice or option to move to the euro, let alone to their own currency. In Togo, if you have over $3,000 of a currency that's not the Colonial Frank, that's a fucking crime.
What?
So it just goes to show you, like, maybe in America, for some people, they feel like financial privacy isn't important. But in this case, right, over in Togo, and in a world with CBDCs, it would be even worse. If you're not able to obscure how much of a certain kind of currency you have or use, or your transaction history, you could be inherently criminalized and sent to jail for it.
I mean, you can't have, if you have more than $3,000 in another currency, it's illegal.
Yep. Because they know the Colonial Frank is literally designed to dump forever. Yeah. Like, more so than a regular fiat currency. Because at least like a regular fiat currency, like, your citizens don't want like money that like is so obviously going down. But if they're like your subjects over in Africa, and the 12 countries in Africa that are forced to use this thing, then you don't give a shit. So you literally just use it to steal all of their resources, and just have it. You just completely have it just go down in value over time, over and over again, like by design. Literally by design. They don't even really fucking hide it. So who would use that currency unless you force people to use it under threat of violence?
Yeah, that's straight up currency enslavement there. Like, think about that. Like, the basis of human flourishing is being able to accumulate capital for yourself and deploy it in the future, depriving people from their ability to accumulate more than $3,000 of a particular currency is literally enslavement.
Yeah, it's theft. Yeah, but I went through this mental exercise laying in bed. Theft of what, though? What are they stealing? It's like stealing your soul, stealing your life, stealing your ability to live with purpose. If I have to work for currency and you get to create it for free, then everything I do in theory in my life is then worthless. It's an unbelievable. And just to be clear, before I get myself in trouble, because I know Bitcoin Twitter, I wasn't calling people in the parliament assholes. In fact, there was a lobby to ban proof of work mining or whatever, and it didn't go through, and they were just looking to learn. But it's people like Sam Bankman-Fried. I have no problem calling out by name. It's people like that, like, hey buddy, I dare you to fly to Togo and look this girl in the eye and tell her that you don't like proof of work because the CFTC told you so, right? It's that type of attitude, his ability to steal the soul of really innocent, good people. That's the other thing too, man. Like, I haven't met a bad person since I landed. So,
Very
and
true.
Gladstein deserves, I just want to shout out Alex. It's unbelievable foresight, genius, and then also obviously like the passion and life with purpose that guy lives. But it was as much magic to educate folks here about Bitcoin as it was to educate Bitcoiners about freedom. That's that type of like mutual hero that we both saw in each other's eyes. So Gladstein, I think he saved humanity many years and hopefully many lives, and hopefully a huge leg in the freedom war in the span of 72 hours. So the guy is never going to get the credit he deserves. So shout out Gladstein.
And not only for the Freedom Forum, and this has been an uphill battle for him, right? Because the HRF is like most people in the HRF were not pro Bitcoin. They still are not pro Bitcoin. Like he's been spending, the last 4, 5, 6 years trying to slowly integrate it more and more into their work. And I'm pretty sure the first initiative was, like I said, January 2020. Maybe it was a little bit before that. And he's come a long way. And it's not only the Freedom Forum. Like this working retreat is like the most high signal. Like the people that are here, man. Like people, I mean, like they just make me feel like I'm not doing enough. Like every single person here makes me feel like I'm not doing enough. That is how high signal this group is. Talking about real issues, talking about how we can improve these situations and how we can do it with the least amount of pain as possible. And it's just really humbling. The whole thing is just, if I didn't love you and the freaks, like, I mean, this is just a podcast, right? Like, why am I even doing this podcast? They're all out there. But I love you guys, and Jack loves you guys. So here we are, sitting in the hotel room, right? Like sitting in the hotel room with the sheets closed, because if I open it, it's so fucking bright outside that you can't see our faces. So like we're like hiding inside so that you could actually see us.
You couldn't steam the curtain first? That'd be waste too much energy. I'm sorry.
What do you mean steam the curtain?
It's a little wrinkly. I'm messing with you.
I don't have a steamer. Like what you think I travel with a steamer?
I'm messing with you. The one thing you said there, Matt, in that little rant was that we need to build this like alongside a decay. You didn't say this exactly, but something along the lines of we need to build this alongside a decaying system where like we need to build so that people have this option as the So that's the other thing too. Like not only are these fiat currencies extremely powerful in their ability to unleash evil on the world and constrict freedom globally, but they're also losing control of them. And that's like another thing that happened while you guys were at the Freedom Forum this week was Christine Lagarde was in the Netherlands at a town hall meeting. I don't know why she did this, but we have one clip this week that we're going to pull this clip. But again, it's extremely telling how dire the situation is in the traditional financial system, in the traditional monetary system. It is becoming glaringly obvious that the central bankers in control of the euro, of the United States dollar, of any other fiat currency around the world are themselves losing control of what they've built. And so, again, we talked about CBDCs earlier. I believe that's what they would like to replace their dying system with so that they can maintain control. And here's just a stunning example of one of the puppet masters of the fiat system just taking the mask off and showing that they really don't have control of the systems that they're running right now. Run it, Car.
To the European Union economies,
we
would be in a devastated situation.
There is this graph about the balance sheet of the European Central Bank and the money that is on there now. And here it is. What I would like to show our viewers and ask the question about is, this is going over 8 trillion euros now. Mm-hmm. And isn't what you just told us about the cryptocurrencies, don't we see a gigantic bubble here on your balance sheet with the euro? And isn't this graph very nerve-wracking.
Well, I can tell you that there is 0 crypto assets in the balance sheet of the ECB.
That I know.
Point number one. Well, I just don't want any ambiguity about it.
Yeah.
But you have to think in terms of counterfactual. If we had not decided on March 18th, when we put together the pandemic emergency program and then subsequently increased the volume of commitment that we made to the European Union economies, we would be in a devastated situation. So I don't regret any of that move that we took on that day, which was 4 months into my job, to significantly increase the size of the balance sheet, because that's all we had.
Yeah.
Otherwise, the economy would have collapsed and it would have been even accelerated by a financial crisis.
You had to do it. It was the COVID crisis. You say that's what we needed to do. But how do you get it?
It will
back?
come. It will come. In due course. Yeah.
How?
In due course, it will come.
Yeah?
No,
But do you
because I
sleep at night when you see this?
Of course I have to sleep at night. And I have to worry every morning. Yeah.
Yeah, okay. Over here.
I was wondering, do you own any cryptos yourself?
We don't have to play
No,
the rest of this.
I don't.
This dude asks, do you own any cryptos? Her son owns cryptos and whatever.
The plural of
Cryptos.
crypto is crypto.
Crypto. But
I'm not going to argue over the plural of crypto. Continue.
no, I just thought, again, you guys are over there in Oslo fighting this good fight on behalf of freedom and Bitcoin in the world. And you have Davos going on. And then you have Christine Lagarde coming
Was
out.
that at Davos?
No, this was in the Netherlands, some town hall that went on earlier this week or
That was
last week.
crazy.
Yeah, in
That
due
was
time.
nuts.
It will come. It will come.
I would just add that there's a lot of shitcoiners over at Davos as well.
Yes.
The Bitcoiners were at the Oslo Freedom Forum. The shitcoiners were at Davos.
Yeah. No, but again,
Yeah.
like to really
Yeah,
drive
so-
home, you should really drive home. Like these people are losing control of
Yeah.
their fiat monetary systems. The euro balance or the ECB balance sheets exploded above 8 trillion euros. They're saying we needed to do it because of the COVID lockdowns. But like when you have somebody pressing the president of the European Central Bank, like, all right, like I understand you say you had to do this, but how do you unwind this? And they just have no clear answer. It will come in due course. It will come. It will come.
I mean,
Trust us. Trust us.
The transcript of that clip is unbelievable. It was only 4 months into my job, so it's not my fault. I know I'm making it worse, but it was going to crash anyway. So the only way to make it better is to make it worse. Do I sleep? I sleep because I physically have to, or else I'd die. And yeah, every day I wake up, I'm terrified and worried. Of course I am. That was like my main 4 takeaways. That was an insane clip.
Yeah. And again,
Not your fault.
going back
New
to
job.
Going-
Everyone's been in there. Everyone's
job,
been
new
4
job.
months into a new job.
Going back to your point though, Matt, like it is imperative that we build out Bitcoin and strengthen Bitcoin and educate as many people and equip them with as much knowledge as possible to properly adopt and use Bitcoin, because these people are losing control. And that's, again, things seem dire right now. Commodity prices going crazy, food shortages, energy shortages. It's pretty chaotic out there, but I think we do have to rally around Bitcoin and provide an optimistic view of the future. I think that clip particularly highlights, all right, these people are losing control. Do you want to keep depending on them to fix the problem they created, or do you want to depend on the freedom fighters at the Oslo Freedom Forum who are actually building something with intention in mind and with particular use cases in mind? Do you think Christine Lagarde is going to help out the individuals in Togo who are subjected to the French franc or whatever the currency's called? Or do you think she's just going to the Colonial Frank? Or do you think she's going to save her own ass? Like that I think in terms of like a narrative and like really putting the options on the table for the public at large, like what you guys have been doing this week versus Christine Lagarde and the Davos crew doing their thing at the same time. I think from a narrative perspective, we really just need to lean into that. Like, all right, who do you want to build the future? These people or these freedom fighters?
So, I mean, it's really poetic that Davos happened at the same time. Usually it doesn't. my understanding is they delayed it because of COVID, and usually happens around the January time. But I think it was really poetic because it just shows the dichotomy of the current ruling class versus the hope for the future, because ultimately Bitcoin is hope. And I just want to reiterate one more time, like the shitcoiners were in Davos and the Bitcoiners were in Oslo.
Enough said. SBF, he wasn't there, but he's pushing. I've been SBF hating on this show. I can't say his last name correctly, so I just say SBF. But yeah, the likes of
It's Bankman-Fried.
Bankman-Fried, that grifter. That's what I like to refer to him these days. I mean, they just reinvested.
I mean, the first name's hard to pronounce too, Sam.
They just reinvested in Luna 2.0, so they're doing a lot to help the world, getting these people into Ponzi schemes.
Oh, that was fucking tragic, dude. So I was talking to Dario of Moonwallet with 2 U's. Oh, by the way, I asked him why he named it that and if he regretted it. And it's a Star Wars reference. I never knew that reference. Apparently it's a Star Wars reference. And that's how it's spelled in Star Wars. But anyway, he told me that, so you know how we talk a lot about on the show that people in Latin America and other places in the developing world really rely on stables. They really rely on stable coins. And even though like they're inherently not stable long term, and they're going down in value because they're pegged to the dollar, and they require trust so they can have black swan events. These people demand access to dollars that they couldn't get access to otherwise. 2 billion people in the world don't have a bank account. 1 billion people don't have an ID. So they have demand for stables, and there's so much, Tether FUD, and there's so much USDC concern because it's a regulated US based like Goldman Sachs, BlackRock stablecoin, that a lot of just like working class Argentinians were in Terra, like a lot, and they all got wiped the fuck out. And Dario was like, it is absolutely horrible to fucking see it. And then you see them like basically come to that realization. They're like, shit, this was that risk. This was the risk that people were telling me, like, oh, you don't have the Bitcoin volatility, but at any moment, like you're trusting this third party that the thing could just fucking blow up. But the way he told me about it is just absolutely tragic. And I know, like, I bring it up because you said Luna 2.0, and I know like we were talking about how like we couldn't imagine that all these guys that pretend they're so smart, like the hedge funders and the Raoul Pauls, who are like, oh, risk-free 20%, like got rugged, and got wrecked and got blown up. But I mean, they can all go fuck themselves, and they got what was coming to them. But it really, like working class and poor people, like, did not deserve that. They did not deserve getting like absolutely destroyed, and they couldn't understand that trade-off model. They couldn't understand the risks they were putting them under. They didn't realize that. They thought they were buying something that represented the US dollar, and then they woke up the next morning and they had fucking no money.
Yeah, that's why I'm becoming more convinced that we need to more aggressively call out these grifters. I mean, people will call us toxic Bitcoin maximalists, but having been through these cycles for 8 years now, I think it's these people say, oh, we're experimenting, let experiments flourish, let the free market decide. But at the end of the day, the Novos of the world, the SBFs of the world, they know exactly what's happening, and they know that the likelihood of any of these projects succeeding is so low that it is irresponsible for them to be pushing this shit.
There's not a little, I was going to say glass half full. How about glass not entirely empty? How about that? 2 things. I know that I'm an OG fan of this podcast, so I know this may be a hot take, but I am more and more do think that the SEC's got to do something.
Nah, fuck that.
No. It's not because I think they need to do something. But what you're going to continue to witness, I think that there's a serious conversation to be had, is that you can't feel devastated for these people, but then believe in no regulation of this stuff, because you're going to get it. Here's my problem. effectively central banks, the perverted risk tolerance across everything. You've had people in the Chicago theater and the thing's on fire. You got to get out in the street, but they're kids, they're toddlers. For the last, since we left the gold standard, no one's ever had to understand how any of this has worked. No one knows what the fuck's going on. And so you have people selling them Malibu mansions that are just tents. And as soon as it rains, they're going to be homeless and they're going to kill themselves. These people running around in the I-94 getting hit by 80-mile-an-hour cars. And you can't be like, oh, God, is that sad? And then be like, all right, well, how about somebody just tells them not to run on the highway? You're like, no, fuck that. It's like, well, I guess like you got to pick a side. It's kind of like you want to watch these people get murdered, or here's my problem with it. Coinbase, Novogratz, these guys are regulated entities that give the legitimacy for the poor in Argentina to buy this shit. And so my problem is, hey, Coinbase, why don't you guys go through proper disclosures of how it works, how it was minted, what central groups have what outside control on the thing, so that people have, or we're gonna have to go through manual education, which I'm also fine with, but I'm gonna have to watch my fellow men and women get slaughtered to death. It's kind of like a lose-lose situation, in my opinion. It's kind of fucked up. And so yeah, that is a security. The people of Argentina deserve for that not to be listed on Coinbase, not to be pumped by venture capital, to be properly disclosed, or they deserve to get murdered.
But like, why should a U.S. regulator be involved in Argentinian commerce?
I'm lesser concerned about any particular regulatory body, and it's more about how do we properly disclose what is violently an attack and a scam.
If U.S. regulators were less involved and less burdensome and less overbearing and fucking in everyone's business, then maybe they would have a more reputable product that they could use privately, rather than relying on some bullshit that came out of the sky. Right?
I agree with you too. I think if U.S. regulators were more favorable towards Bitcoin, didn't force KYC down everyone's throat. Listen, I mean, I run a regulated business, and I mean, I have to follow the law, but I'm not necessarily a fan of all of it. A lot of it's out there, right? So I don't think that those are mutually exclusive things. Because the other thing that I thought was kind of hilarious, coming from a trading background, especially in Chicago, well, my dad's trading background, it's that Luna got blown up because of market incentives, which is fucking awesome. You saw Ken Griffin come out and say, in more or less words to the SEC, you guys want to protect retail? Give me the regulatory clarity to trade in this market. Because Ken Griffin was like, in more or less words, I'm no fucking Novogratz. I don't make money by issuing shit coins that are illiquid and then dumping bags. I make money by taking on risk and blowing people the fuck out and using my balance sheet that I've accrued over the last 25 years. So you guys want to really protect retail? Let me in this place, because I will nuke this. I will drag all the pieces of shit. I will blow them out by the shed and put them in the garbage bag and take them out to the alley. That was more or less what he said. And so anyway, my point is, like, do I think that the U.S. needs to step in? No, of course not. Do I think that these people are, you're putting toddlers into the street looking for homes, and you've got venture capitalists selling them pictures of a monkey drooling on themselves, like, man, this Malibu mansion, like, oh man, you getting a steal. It's fucked up. And yeah, let Ken Griffins in. Give us the regulatory clarity to disclose proper bullshit, and let people use the market incentives to clean the house. Like, Ken Griffin is going to borrow ETH if they put on proof of stake and short that thing and blow it the fuck out of the water. Like, that's, I don't know. That's I think it's a worthy conversation in my opinion.
He may not even have the opportunity to do that. He's fucking puking right now. That's another thing. It seems like there is a market reaction to like the Terra blow up and all these shit coins falling. Bitcoin's relative strength compared to shit coins this week has been extremely impressive. It seems like there's an exodus from.
Last time you said that we dumped.
Can I reply to that?
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah.
I see this is the free market.
Zorn 101 commented, this is the free market, is the poor's responsibility to figure it out.
So I don't disagree with that. I'm all for it. I just think the conversation's worthwhile, because hear me out. The system is designed so that if you were poor, you get exponentially poorer, and if you're rich, you get exponentially richer. All you have to do is have enough non-working capital to hold assets, and the system's designed for those to accrue against the dollar. So if you hold anything that's not the dollar, it's going to get inflated, and it's another way of saying your house is going to go up, your Bitcoin is going to go up, your stock portfolio is going to go up. And if you cannot afford to hold assets, you're designed to get poorer, because those things will inflate and you will continually get further and further away from being able to hold them. So my problem with that comment, although I have no problem with that being the reality of the world, I think it's worth a conversation, though, is that someone was probably very much born into forcibly being poor, unless they got tremendously lucky. And then we're kind of like, free market, figure it the fuck out. And it's kind of like, figure what out? Like, I kind of have forcefully been poor because of the system I was born into. So I know both sides, and I know the show and the audience in particular. Just saying.
And you know the guy sitting next to you too.
I'm just saying it may be worth something. But I mean,
look, I think the world we're moving towards is a world where you can't ask a single country's government to step in to do, like, be world police and do things. And I think it will be for the better ultimately. And so if we're talking about a world with personal responsibility, it goes both ways. Like, people, you know, who were uneducated, who are getting onboarded into the so-called crypto ecosystem in Argentina and other developing countries, have a personal responsibility to understand the trade-offs that they're dealing with and understand the risks that they're taking. But also, as Bitcoiners, you know, we have a personal responsibility here. And I would say to the greater crypto ecosystem has a personal responsibility here. But I mean, I just don't have any faith in them whatsoever, and they can go fuck themselves. We have a personal responsibility here to educate people on these risks and to build tools so that they choose not to go down dangerous paths.
Matt, you just lock it up, you get 20% risk-free yield. It's that simple. That's the risk. It's risk-free. These people are bad act. Like, again, like I've been
saying, right? Like in a free market, right? That's what it comes like. And if we have a proper free market, if we end up in a proper free market, that's what has to happen, right? Like, good people have to come out and they have to educate people on the risks. They have to provide tools that give them options that are not risky like that. And they have to act in an ethical way. Like, you just like, if you remove violence from the equation, like, the only thing you can count on is good people acting in a way to try and improve the world, right? Like, what else do you have unless you want to rely on violence?
No, I agree.
And I've been in like there was a period probably over the last couple years where all the shitcoiners being like, you're just a toxic Bitcoin maxi, like, stop like shitting on everything. I just got exhausted of doing it. I was like, you know, and I'm just going to focus on Bitcoin. But like the last couple weeks, last month in particular, is like, no, like these people, like the Novos, the Raoul Pauls, even like Suzu, and like everybody pushing like the merge and Ethereum, like they're pushing people to get wrecked. And now I've gotten very angry the last few weeks, like having heard similar stories to the Argentines losing their value overnight. Like, there was a bunch of people in the Philippines who fell for terror as well, poor people. Just got absolutely wrecked. And then you have like the Novos of the world come out and be like, crypto is going to survive. It's like, no, you are leading people to slaughter and you need to be called out. And like the class of big dick investor in the crypto space is complete fucking disgrace. These people need to be called out vigorously and aggressively. Like, sorry, Udi, like I'm not here to like play nice with like other experiments, if you will. Like, there's people losing a material amount of money, and like again, like the situation is very high stakes right now. Again, you have the traditional financial system crumbling, you know, because the fiat monetary system is printing way too much debt, and we have we have a shot to provide people with an alternative that can actually make their lives better, and you have all these crypto assholes confusing the fuck out of everybody and pushing people extremely far out on the yield curve that it sours them to Bitcoin. And like I think Bitcoiners have done a good job of this historically, but I think we need to make an even bigger push to completely separate ourselves from that crypto nonsense, because it does do the small guy a mass disservice at the end of the day.
Correct. Yeah, no, I agree. And I'm
did we lose them?
My bad, I gotta scroll up. The Zorn 101. I agree, man. He said he was born on zero and it was his job. I don't
You want me to read it
disagree.
out?
I knew.
I was born on zero. It's my job to sort it out. The SEC hates me, and you asking them for help is like asking someone who has no insensitive to help you to help. Just my 2 cents.
Your 2 cents is super valid. That's 100 cents. I don't disagree. It just sucks, man. I'm sitting here at the fucking Freedom Forum and I'm hearing these poor people get rubbed, and it sucks. The thought crossed my mind. It did. Bitcoin doesn't need it. Bitcoin's going to win no matter what happens. But yeah, I don't know. There's no more humbling audience than this crowd.
I don't have the comments, the live comments up anymore on the stream unless Carr pulls them up.
I'm just feeling
it can get distracting.
All I can say is this last week I'm left feeling grateful and humbled, and people should watch the Oslo Freedom Forum videos. They should go to oslofreedomforum.com and they should watch the videos.
You guys got to wrap up here. I've got one shout out and then I've got one question for Jack. Marty, Perfect. Matt, and Carr, thank you for providing valuable and insightful information on a weekly basis. It's difficult to describe the personal transformation I've made over the past couple of years while driving down the rabbit hole and listening to TFTC, RHR, and Citadel Dispatch. Although the story isn't anything new at this point, it goes without saying that the future would look extremely bleak without Bitcoin as one of those Excel sheet jockeys sitting under neon lights. That is so often described in your show. My top priorities have quickly shifted to finding a Bitcoin-only job and providing value to the space in my community, even if that just means orange pilling my parents. Done. Thankfully, I've been banned from the office due to certain medical choices, giving me more time to pursue these goals. Additionally, thank you for calling out so much of our clown world, but please don't call the peak again. Also, shout out to Mares, who first suggested TFTC to me. We're going to win from Cape. Thank you, Cape.
Shout out Mares, and appreciate you, freak.
I know Mares very well. I was in his wedding.
Oh, you actually know? Oh, awesome.
One of my first,
fuck yeah.
One of my first friends to actually listen to me and buy Bitcoin. Shout out to Mares.
Oh, fuck yeah.
I love you, brother. And then you guys got to get to dinner, but want to wrap it up with this, maybe a more lighthearted question. Did you have the chance? No. Did you have the chance to sit down and talk to Gary Kasparov as a chess enthusiast?
No, they're making fun of Marty's pants.
Oh,
I can't see your pants, bro.
It's the white pants. It's the white pants. They're
Jack
hot.
has never had comments while he's recording, so he's really mesmerized.
I am.
You remember when we first started doing the
Matt,
live?
why do you have the comments up? Why do you have the comments up? I tell you to not have the comments up. It's
because
distracting.
We're with
distracting.
The freaks. It's an important aspect of RHR, the live chat, and I appreciate them all.
I know.
I did meet Gary. It was the coolest thing ever. I won't make the story too long, but I met him, and he was the first guy to fully understand the title The King's Gambit, which was my talk at the Bitcoin conference. He's a Bitcoiner. We exchanged contact info. We're going to do something that involves both chess and Bitcoin. He's on our team. And the coolest thing ever is before I went on stage at the conference with Fode, I tossed him a very casual E4, and he replied with a C5. And we must have blindfold blitzed out like 15 moves before I had to go on. So he's a Bitcoiner. He's the man and a freedom fighter. He's a better freedom fighter than he is Bitcoiner, and that says a lot. So, yes, hopefully that answers the question.
Hell yeah. Well, gentlemen, thank you for the work that you did this week. Educating and arming. Oh, God, not arming. Educating and providing activists with Bitcoin knowledge and tools. Go enjoy your dinner. Get back safe to the States. And, Jack, thank you for joining us. It's always a pleasure, sir.
You
always. No, I'm a fanboy. This is huge.
I just want